Church, I would have thought, in all honesty, with the world situation as it is and us before probably the most contentious election since that of Lincoln, the church would have been packed to overflow with people wanting to pray for this nation. I want you to listen to something. In the weeks leading up to May the 14th of 1787, only 2 of the colonies had sent representatives to Philadelphia. Only 2. They needed 9 for a quorum, so the 2 colonies and their representatives simply waited until the others eventually arrived. They went about 4 or 5 weeks discussing a constitution for a new government. And I want you to listen to the senior statesman in the room. He's been called a deist, but at times he sounds evangelical. His name was Benjamin Franklin. The small progress we have made after 4 or 5 weeks, close attendance, and continual reasoning with one another, our different sentiments on almost every question, several of the last producing as many notes as A's, as methinks a melancholy proof of the imperfection of the human understanding. We indeed seem to feel our own want of political wisdom. What Franklin is saying is we can't agree on anything. Since we've been running about in search of an answer, we've gone back to ancient history for models of government. They went back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome to look for models on which to model this government. We've examined the different forms of those republics which have been formed with the seeds of their own dissolution, now no longer existing. And we have viewed modern states all around Europe, but find none of their constitutions suitable to our circumstances. They looked all over current Europe and could not find anything that they felt like was right for these 13 colonies. In this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark to find political truth and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, he's talking about the Revolutionary War, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. To that kind of providence, we owe this happy opportunity of consulting in peace on the means of establishing our future national felicity, and have now forgotten that powerful friend. Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time. And the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth. God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it possible that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings that except the Lord build, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests. Have mercy. That's Matt Brunson, not Franklin. Our projects will be confounded. We ourselves shall become a reproach and a byword down to the future age. And what is worse, mankind may hereafter from this unfortunate instance despair of establishing governments by human wisdom and leave it to chance, war, and conquest. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth, he's making a motion now, before Congress, or before the men gathered that we would know as Congress, this Continental Congress, that henceforth prayers imploring the insistence of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more of the clergy of this city be requested to officiate in that service. God created three institutions. The family. Before he created any other institution, he created the family, and the family is the bedrock of this society and of every society that has ever existed. I believe firmly in what God teaches in his word about the family. He also created the government. Read Romans chapter 13, verse 1. Government just didn't spring up on its own. God created government. You say, well, he created a mess. No, he created government for our welfare. We have created the mess. The third thing he created was the church. In the Old Testament, it was the Jewish assembly, the synagogue, the temple. In the New Testament, at Pentecost, it's the church. We have a responsibility in all three areas, and all I'm going to say, because I've got to quickly get to this message, is that you have a responsibility as a Christian to be obedient, to do the work of a citizen in this government, and that is to vote. And if you have not planned to vote, you need to decide you're going to vote. And all I can give you as instruction is use the Word of God as your guide. Okay. Now, take your Bibles and go with me to the 41st chapter of Genesis, where you're going to discover what I call the Joseph Project. I guess you could call it the Genesis Project as well, but that'd take a little more preaching than I've got time for this morning. It's the Joseph Project. Joseph comes in. He makes it very clear to Pharaoh that Pharaoh has not just dreamed a dream, but that God has given him a dream, and that God will give him an answer to this unusual dream. Now, we looked at that dream last week. And as soon as he gives him an interpretation, beginning in verse 33, Joseph immediately gives him a solution to the issue. Now, let me tell you what the solution is. Kirkwood just read it from out of Genesis chapter 41, beginning in verse 33. What Joseph tells him is this, without having to go off and pray about it, without having to go off and think about it, without having to go off and, seek counsel about it. Joseph knows, because God has prepared Joseph's heart in this area, and that is, he says the answer to all of this is that you must prepare for the future immediately. Immediately. He says this thing, because you dreamed it twice, it is a way that God is telling you he's about to bring this about very quickly, immediately. There will be the 7 years of abundance, but there will be 7 years of famine so severe that it will be so severe that no one will remember the 7 years of abundance. And so he said, Pharaoh, you're going to have to begin to plan for the future immediately. Now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land. Let him exact a fifth of the produce, that's 20% of the land of Egypt, in the 7 years of abundance. And then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain for food in cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it. There are actually cities of grain that were set up that have been uncovered by archaeologists. You can go to Egypt, you can see these granaries, you can see the cities that were set up to store all of this grain. It actually happened. This is history. I realize a lot of times that we don't think that, but it actually is history. Now, this week I had a good bit of time to spend in airports reading, and I had a lot of time to sit in hotels while I was off preaching, reading. And I came across an article out of a Forbes magazine by an interesting guy whose name is Alex Jelinovich. Jelinovich he was a member of the Forbes, the very prestigious Forbes Forbes, Forbes Council, and is a Ukrainian entrepreneur. Has started multiple companies. One of them happens to be Code Gym, which is a company that teaches people how to learn and write Java code. So, computer code for computers. And he was talking about plans for the future. Now, that's what caught my attention. And he started talking about how companies are going to have to, in these days, right now, plan for the future because of his companies. He started like 6 or 7 or 8 of these different companies. And he said, what we discovered when the pandemic hit was that we had 2-year plans. And the 2-year plans that were in place when COVID hit, he said we were able to achieve in 2 months. He says we had to gear up to move quicker. Now you think about that. I don't know what business you're in, but your plans over the next 2 years having to be done in the next 2 months. He said we discovered we could do a lot more than what we're doing. But then he goes into talking about long-term plans for major corporations. And he talks about them planning long-term in the future, and then about smaller companies and smaller, places and planning for the next 5 years or so. Now, all of that was fascinating to me because I've spent basically a year, you've not seen it, but I've spent basically a year with the staff, with the executive staff and then the larger staff, and then a good bit of time with the elders and all working through what I'm going to share with you this morning. And in doing that, I got interested in what this guy was saying because he was talking like he had been through the Oxano process, which I know he hadn't. But he said this, he says, we're gonna have to shift. We can't stop, we can't give up planning, but we've got to know how to begin to plan in a different way. And he mentions 4 things that really just left me sitting there rereading this 2 and 3 times. He says you have to switch your focus toward things like the mission. And I thought to myself, well, that's amazing to me because that's what we've done here really over the last 6 years is focus in on the mission. If you have looked at our mission statement and you have looked at our pathway for how somebody moves through the church, you see the end result is what we call you living on mission. Our whole desire is to have every member of Valleydale living on mission. Now you say, well, what is that? Well, I don't know what God's called you to do, but I can tell you if you're saved, He's called you to a mission. You should have a missional aspect about your life. So when I read that really kind of captured my attention. And then the second thing he said is this, you're going to have to live this out by your values, that your values should be part of your planning. Well, my stars, here are our values: truth, relationship, generosity, evangelism, and prayer. And we say it like this: truth with transformity, that is the Word of God. We're talking about this truth right here, not somebody else's truth, but God's truth. We're talking about relationships with authenticity. That's the fellowship here, that our fellowship is genuine, that it's real, that it's warm, that it's inviting. Generosity with joy, that's not just the giving of your money, that's the giving of yourself, the giving of your time, the giving of your abilities, your talents, your gifts. Evangelism with urgency, because we realize the days are short. The time is short. And the fifth thing is prayer with persistence. That is, that everything should be bathed in prayer. The third thing that he mentioned was this: vision. There has to be a vision. When I came to this church, I was asked, in fact, every church that I've ever gone to as pastor, the first question I am ever asked is this: what is your vision for this church? Well, when I went to churches early on, I began to put together, before I got there, some type of vision that I thought God was calling this church to. And I've done that with the exception of the last two churches, Jacksonville and this church. And God taught me in Dallas, you don't go to a church with a vision, you don't even know the place. Go to the church with a process. What is the process? Getting to know you, getting to know the church, getting to know the community. And then God can bring about a vision. The fourth thing that he talked about here was that of decision. Not just vision, but then there comes a moment of decision. He calls it principles. The principle is you must make a decision. Church is all about decision. Every Sunday I preach toward a decision. I preach toward somebody walking an aisle and putting their faith and their trust in Jesus Christ. That's why I give invitations. I invite people to come to Jesus. I invite people to come and be a part of the church. So I want you to understand that every bit of that, I sat back and we all look for affirmation, and I felt such affirmation. It was as if God said, you're moving in the right direction with what you're doing. Because this is exactly the process that we followed. So I'm going to break this up into several sections. The first section is something that I feel is necessary that try to help and explain how we finance things at this church. We call it the One Fund. Now you say, you're new and you say, well, what does that mean? And we're going to, in a few weeks, you're going to be getting a budget from this church, and it will basically be a budget for the next 2 years so that next year, praise Jesus, we won't have to do any of this. So you'll look at a budget that really is based, we did that 2 years ago. We did the same thing. So we're going to look at a budget for 2 years, and the staff has all been a part of that. And I think the elders have already gone through this. They've looked at it. The deacons will be going through this as well. It will be presented to you. You'll have a time that you can come and ask questions of the finance committee and the personnel committee and whatever other committee that there is. So that's coming. But let me explain to you the One Fund. In this church, we take everything and we put it into one fund. You say, well, I particularly like this area. Well, we still take what you give and we put it into one fund. Because you see, we don't minister just to one area in this church. You know, we have teenagers that are off on a fall retreat right now. I got an email or text message last night from Jason Simpson, who sent 3 pictures, and he said, revival done broke out among the youth. All of them were down at the altar. I wish I had sent these on. I wish you could see the pictures of all of our teenagers down. So a portion of everything that you give, a portion of it goes to teenagers. A portion of that goes to the children that are downstairs, those that are in the nursery, those that have to have baby beds and baby toys and baby stuff. And then a portion of it goes to the children, and a portion of it goes to everybody on up the chain, to our senior adults, to our legacy adults. And so we take what comes in and we budget for the course of a year. Now we've done it now. This will be the second cycle for 2 years. What do we think we're going to need in this area of ministry? And we try very hard not to exceed that in a unusual way. We try to be very thorough with that. And you have a finance committee that oversees that. So that's how we do a one fund. That's why I don't get up. Now, I know I did a month ago for several Sundays because of the hurricane. And we raised some additional funds to send directly to those that work with our state disaster relief. And some of the leaders, at least 3 of the leaders, are here in this congregation. Numbers of our people go out of here to work with that disaster relief, chainsaws and food preparation and showers and laundry units and things like that go into these areas that are hit by disaster. And you gave above and beyond. I don't raise extra offerings during the course of the year. I don't get up here and raise additional offerings for this or that or the other. In fact, if you've been here any length of time, you'll know that I have probably preached on money about 2, maybe 3 times at the most. And you say, well, why is that? Because most of the people in this church understand what God has said and understand God's economy, and that we are to give. Now, we use a tenth, and you say, isn't that legalistic? Well, you can say it's legalistic, so go ahead, give more than that. Don't be legalistic. Do more than what the law requires. I always say that to Christians. If you can't give by grace, under grace, what the Jew gave by law, you really are living in disgrace. Our first year of marriage, Debbie and myself, our first year of marriage, she determined we were not going to be in debt. I determined we were going to tithe. And we tithed, and we've been married for over 45 years, and for 45 years, we have never missed a single meal because of the tithe. God has met our needs and has exceeded our needs. And I'll tell you to the day I die, the reason I have what I have is because God has honored the fact that we have honored His word with the tithe. Now, a lot of you here don't do that. You don't trust God, and there's no other way to say it other than the fact you just don't trust God with your finances. Well, let me encourage you to do something. See if you can trust God. Begin wherever you can begin and move as quickly as you can to that tithe and watch and see how God will meet your needs. Now, I'm not a gospel prosperity preaching preacher, but I do believe God honors the life. And the greatest blessings in my life have never been the financial blessings. They have been all the other kind of blessings. God has blessed me with the most wonderful wife I could have ever asked for. He's blessed me with 3 children that respect us and love us and care for us, and has blessed us with 16 grandchildren, and has blessed us in numerous other ways down through the years. Your greatest blessings in life are not financial, by the way. So that's how we fund things here at this church. I don't preach on it. Have you noticed we don't even take up an offering in here? Yes, this is a Baptist church. We don't even take up an offering. You have to drop your offering in the box going out. That's very New Testament, by the way. That's the way the church did it. That's the way the way they did it in the temple. So, and just remember, Jesus watches the box. So let me take you now into what we've called the Joseph Project. And if you picked up one of these, you can kind of follow along in this as I walk you through it over the next few moments. I want you to see that I'm going to divide this really into 3 areas, which I see all of our ministries divided into. And the first is going to be ministry. The second will be mission. The third will be a vision of future development. So the first is our ministry, the ministries that we do here around the church. Now, one of the things that I have asked for, personally myself, is I have asked for us to get a couple of extended golf carts, because we have senior adults that park out and away from the church, and it will be wonderful to be able to run out there in an extended golf cart, pick up our senior adults and bring them up to the door, especially in inclement weather. It's supposed to rain next Sunday, and next Sunday when you get wet, you just think, I could be riding in a golf cart if they'd have done what the preacher said. The other reason is for moms who come into this church and they are carrying one baby on this hip, and they are already poking out with the next baby coming, and they got the hand of a toddler, and they've got this diaper bag here and this other bag here, and that mom is trying to get up to the door of the church, coming up the hill down here. Well, it would be nice if we could put that mom and those little kids in that golf cart and just wheel her up here to the door and then pick her up and take her back. It's just a form of ministry. I've asked somebody very responsible, Mike Mace, if he would head that up, if he would look after that for me, and I'm answering for Mike, and Mike will tell me yes on that. So. And he's very responsible, drives a school bus. We would like people who have a license and who have not had more than 5 wrecks in the last year to do this. So that is that. The other thing I have asked, and I see that we need, is an extended counseling ministry. I've noticed this need and the growth of this need while Miss Kathy Napier was here with us. She's now gone back home. I miss her terribly. Pray for her. Keep her in your prayers. As you know, she had cancer, and she's her health is not as good as we would like for it to be, or she would be here. I have seen, based on what she shared with me, the need to expand our counseling ministry. Now, it will take us a few years to get where I want us to be, because I want us to have a counselor that counsels with children. Tara already does that already now. Tara does that for children here, but we need somebody for a little older children and teenagers and young couples with marital issues, and that goes for the rest of life, down through the rest of life. And then for other issues, addiction issues and things like that. We need somebody special in that area. Every one of them must be unquestioned in their commitment to the Word of God. So these are going to be Christian counselors who believe in the Word of God and can help not just our church family and not just this community, but you don't know, we have a number of people coming in here from other churches who need our help as well. And we have a couple in the church who've given us, they own a piece of property and a house, not a house, but a building, a business building, right at the end of our property, very nice facility that they have said the whole top floor of that facility is for our use as a counseling facility. So we are already beyond the game. See how God has saved us money, and God has given us a way that we can fulfill that ministry a lot quicker than I thought. Now it's up to us to begin to find these counselors to put there. Now those are my two things. Let me turn now to worship, to Kirkwood. Kirkwood has talked to us about the need for worship tech resources, this right here. As much as this room is used here, it is not the most used room in the building. It is the theater that is up on the next floor. Now, I don't know if you call that the second floor or the third floor, but I'm going to call it the second floor, okay? And the basement is the ground floor. So he has said we need, because everything up there is over 20 years old. Now, in the exception of a wife, anything over 20 years of age is old. I want to be careful here. So, you see, this right here is something that he says we need. It has the original lights, the original sound system, and the sound system up there is very iffy. He says also, even here, we need additional light upgrades on the ends of these, because I tend to walk off into the shadows. There's shadows up here. He tells me that. My wife tells me that. And we have a growing online population. We have over 300 people a week that tune into our online ministries and pick up our services. And we need some additional light for this area up here as well. So that's what we're looking to do. Now, all of this that I'm telling you now is beyond the budget. We have budgeted in for the ministries that we're doing right now. But we're looking for things that we need to do. We've said, what is it that you need in your area? And let me show you what we need in the children's area. We just finished a major renovation down in the preschool area, and it looks great. We have a new outdoor playground, playground, which is extremely nice, paid for. We never had to raise money for that, paid for. And we redid the whole inside of the preschool, the indoor preschool playground, and all of that. That's all been done really nice. Thank you for your faithful giving. Now we need to do this with the children's area as well. It is very dark down there. And it needs new lighting, it needs new carpet, it needs safer floors, and it needs new paint. Do you see these stripes here? This is what Miss Jamie tells me, that if she has an 8-year-old that comes in there with a mom and dad, and they're needing to get to the 8-year-old class, this has a design to it that she says, okay, follow the orange road to the orange classroom. And so it will be on the wall and in the carpet of how they can easily get to their classes. We have had to take the whole ground floor now for our preschool and children's ministries. That's how it's growing. The academy is growing. We have a waiting list now for our academy. When I first came here, we were desperate for just somebody to come to the academy and desperate for teachers. Now our academy has a waiting list, and beyond that, we're thinking that next fall, we may start a first grade class. We already have a teacher who has stated that they will come, because the number one request in our academy is, please give us a first grade, because our children love it here, and we can actually begin to teach children academics on a biblical foundation. Now, here is the third thing, and it's recreation. This is Chuck's area. Chuck's area has just exploded, folks. We have flag football, basketball, and volleyball here, and the teams have just, I don't even remember, and I don't know if Chuck's in the service, but it has just grown exponentially in all of those things, along with things like WindShape and Vacation Bible School. They grow. We pack those out. WindShape, we can only have so many every year, and we have a waiting list for that, and we have only so many. VBS just continues to grow, but here is Chuck in his area of family recreation, and do you know that 60 to 70% of the children that are involved in all of this recreation are outside of Valleydale Church? Now, if you want to talk about a ministry that is reaching the outside, that is really reaching those that are in this community, it is this area of recreation. He has also put in for a walking trail. Now, I think that is already funded. However, that's okay. You can give to it, give millions to it. We've got 44 acres of land here. We're putting in a walking trail where you can just go out there and knock yourself out. You can go out there and walk to your heart's content. We also have got in that area a storage shed. He needs a place to put all of the equipment, because they're hauling tons of equipment now out for all of these games that are out there on the fields, and for the golf carts, and he needs a Lady Gaga ball pit. He has yet to explain that to me. I don't know what Lady Gaga has to do with the Baptist church, but there it is. So there are the areas of ministry. Those are just 3 areas, or really 4 with what I gave you, 4 things beyond the budget that we feel like are very needed in this church, but we did not feel like we could put them in the budget. Now let me turn to missions, because this is a church that loves missions. We are committed to missions. And I just want to tell you that as of right now, your church gives pretty well close to 20% of the income of this church to missions. Anybody in here been a part of a church that has given 20% of the church budget to missions? I didn't think so. Well, you are now, so everybody ought to raise their hand. You're a part of a church. That is, out of every dollar that you give, 20% goes toward missions. And we are literally all over the country. We are helping to start. We've been doing this for a couple of years out in San Diego. The church start in Las Vegas just started a few weeks ago. We are helping with a church plant. I think it's in Pensacola, just outside the military base there, the air base there. We're working there. We have 2 in New Orleans that we work with. We have the one in Burlington that you are familiar with. And we've not just given them money, we've given them personnel. We've sent at least 2 of our families off of our staff up there to be a part of that. We're also doing things overseas. We are part of helping a church start in the Middle East, and I'll just leave it there. We have also a family that is in the Middle East that is in a place we can't talk about, that we help with them. They're part of us. We are starting a church, another church. We've already done one in North London, up in where the Turkish immigrants are. They are, of course, Islamic. We are in Moldova helping. In fact, the very first gift that I got toward this was to build a church in Moldova. I wish I had time to go through this. They have found a very fascinating way to build a church quickly that meets their needs and that is large enough to contain at least 100, maybe 125, 50 people. And it is a neat type of facility, all with glass around it so that people walking by can see them in their worshiping. Anyway, there's great opportunity there. And then in Nepal, now we've just gotten a group back from Nepal, a group back from London, and a group back from Taiwan. We are also helping start a church. The building has been secured. We've just had a group come back from there. Patrick this morning was telling me that they are extremely mission-minded. These folks there, part of the church in Taiwan, it is the only church in a very pagan, idol-worshiping village. The only church in that town. And they have a young man who has already surrendered to become a missionary. So we're going to try to help him get here, to get training, to go back to Taiwan, to leave from Taiwan, to go wherever it is God's calling him to do mission work. Thank you. Some of that stuff is just fabulous to think about. One of the things, now let me talk to you about catalyst events. We want to do 3 catalyst events, one in London, one in Moldova, one in Nepal. That means this, we want to go in because one of the needs is not just to plant a church, but the pastors need help. Most of these pastors need education, training. I'm going next fall to London to do some of the training with the group of guys that are there in that North London area. We'll be doing training with them. We'll be helping them in doing ministry to their neighborhoods. We'll be assisting the churches. We'll be talking to them about how to train their lay people, how to do church, how to sermon preparate, all these things. We're going to work with them. We're also working in the same area in Moldova. Now, one of the amazing things that I discovered when I got to Moldova was that they have a fabulous seminary there. In fact, it's one of the finest seminaries I've ever seen and been in. I had the privilege of preaching there. They had to translate my sermon into Russian, but I had the opportunity to preach there. Then we met with a slew of students that came out of Central Asia. Students who heard the gospel in some way, gave their life to Jesus Christ, and Christ called them into ministry. They've been brought into Moldova to be trained. And there in Moldova, they are being trained and they're going back into their country to plant a church. Now, what we can do is this. For as little as $50 a month. Do you know what $50 a month is to a couple in Moldova? Well, it's the difference between having food, not having food. For $50 a month, we can help support. $100 a month, we can support a family of these students who are in seminary, that is a small investment. And when they go back, we could have already sent to Moldova a small group. Now, we can't send in big groups to the places I'm talking about. We can send in small group, but we can send you over to Moldova. You will get to meet these people, build a relationship with this couple, and when they go back into their country, you'll be able to go in country and help them as they plant a church in that place. Just sit there. What a unique opportunity that has been presented to us. And so I'm thankful. Listen, let me tell you, there in Moldova, I mean, the Russians are right there on top of them. Ross and I rode right by a Russian tank with a soldier. I looked at Ross, I said, Ross, I think we can take him. I said, let's take him and get the tank. I said, wouldn't you like to have a tank? I'd love to have a tank. So, but, Brenda said not to do it, so we didn't do it. So anyway, there's what we're doing. These catalyst events, this church development, helping these churches develop themselves and develop a ministry to where they become sending churches as well, so that they can begin to send, just like the one in Taiwan has already got somebody who wants to go out of that church to do mission work. So we have set aside additional monies beyond the $1 million that we're giving now to the missions through the one fund. You see, that funds it all. That funds the ministry here, and it funds the missions. And we're already given $1 million. This is some additional funds on top of that to be given to do special projects like we're talking about here. Now, let me give you the third thing. And I got 41 seconds to do this. I've spent too much time on all this other. But now let me talk to you about funding a vision for the future. Funding a vision for the future. Now let me just show you something. I want you to look at this and tell me what it is. What is that? Now what can you do with a wrench? A lot. Somebody said a lot. I can work on the plumbing at the house with a wrench and really mess it up. I can work on the automobile with a wrench. I can work on a bicycle with a wrench. I can work on some of the electrical stuff with a wrench. I can do a lot of things with a wrench. You know what that is? It's a tool. That's all that is right there. We don't get hyperventilated by looking at a tool. Now, let me just show you another tool. That's a tool. That's all that is. It's just a tool. Its value is in how we use it. The value is not in the building itself. The value is in how do you use that. And what is this? Well, this is a new addition to our educational facility right here. It's a 2-story, and it will be built to hold a 3rd story up here. So when we build it, we've already cooked the price in that it can go up 1 more floor, but we're looking at our needs for the future in a 2-story educational wing that will be, if you go out and like you're going out the bank of doors in the hallway up there, if you just look at the end of the hall, that's where that's going to fit. It will come right in there and come straight out of that hallway. In fact, that hallway will continue into this building, and there will be an elevator in it. This, let me hold off on this. This is a chapel down the road. Now, don't get caught up in the aesthetics of this. Don't get caught up in the exact plan of this. I am sure all of this will get massaged over time, or I'm not a Baptist. I can guarantee you it will. So you say, well, why do we need that? We've got room in here. We've got room, but we don't have room elsewhere. That's the issue. Let me take you through our building right now and show you the study that we did. This is our 9:15 service. Right now, all of these rooms down in the preschool, all of that's being used except this room, and that room. There are only 3 rooms down there. So I can tell you this is way over 80% full. This is this main floor here at 9. We have a few classrooms. In fact, I walked by a classroom at 8 o'clock this morning that had one empty chair in it, maybe two, one or two. And Pastor Charles was holding court in there this morning. Now, let me give you we're going back here. Guys, has this been up all the time? Well, why didn't y'all tell me? Because this is what you see right here. You see all of this. We're basically full. Big room's full. This is all of this is full. Third floor, all of this is full. And the fact of the matter is, we've just reclaimed a room for our youth, but our youth has been meeting out here in the hallways. Now, we're full in this church in youth and children. Henry Blackaby says, see where God is moving and following there. So we're full in this building in youth and in children. We need some additional space. When you've got a meeting in hallways, when you're on the verge, when you're over 80% capacity, we're going to have to do something. All right, I don't even know what the next slide is, but put it up. We'll pray that okay. Here's the 1045 hour. Do you see this area here? Still all of it full, except for these three. There's one other additional room. This, I think we're making that to where we can move children into it. This floor is pretty well still full. This, packed. So there are our 2 hours. We have had some classes go to the early hour. And I'm not going to talk about what we have made extensive plans of what we can do until we can get a new facility that will handle the people. Okay, let's see the next thing and see what's coming up next. I'm going. This is Wednesday nights. Wednesday nights, now I don't understand about all this, but I do understand that we are at capacity pretty much down here on Wednesday nights. All of the building on Wednesday nights, we're running over 600 on Wednesday nights. When I got here, you had 35 maybe on a good Wednesday night. And now we're running over 600 in every room. And we're fixing to take over the counseling rooms to put small groups in. We've got discipleship groups that are meeting. Some Sunday school classes are meeting on Wednesday nights when there's childcare. And then we've got all of the children that are involved. So here's a summary of the space. Students are at capacity. Midweek is at capacity. Children's ministry is at capacity. When these areas are full, a church is full. Now, we could not have this problem. We could be saying everybody here is 65 years of age and above, and we wish a child would come. But we are reaching so many families right now with a children's ministry that we have got to do something to meet the needs of those that are not even here yet. Those that are yet to come, families that are yet to come, and to walk into this church to be a part. And in fact, I want to do something. Let me do it right now. I want to call up two couples in the church right now. Matt and Amanda Sutter with their children, and Matt and Virginia Smith and their children. I want them to come on up. And as they're making their way here, let me do this as they're coming up. Let me tell you where we are in all of this. And I'll try to do more of this next week, but my time is gone. So let me tell you that we've broken this down into the two phases. Can you put the building back up, guys? We've broken this down into two phases. Here is the first phase would be this educational building here, or you see it right here. And then the second phase would be the chapel that you see right here in purple, and in the blue is in the blue right here is going to be right across there would be the line, the educational space, and then the chapel. Here you see it in the two colors. Now we've broken that into two phases. Phase one would be the educational wing, and let me give you a price on that. The price on that is $5,218,400. Now, the good news is this. We have $2 million in the bank already. At the end of this year, if you continue to give the way you're giving, we believe we're going to have an additional $1 million. At the end of this year, we'll have $3 million, which means we will be only $2.5 million away from this building. Now, you say, well, just wait another 2 years. Well, we could do that, but we're going to have real growing problems. I think we can raise the $2.5 million for that new facility very quickly. I think if you will pray about what God wants you to do and what you can do, I think we'll be able to take that, do what we need in missions for next year, campus improvements, do the ministry, do the missions, and do the future space that we will need. Because by the end of this year, we will be about $3 million of savings. I'm asking us to save our money, to do what Joseph has done, save our money for the future need of this congregation. God has blessed this church over the last several years, and He has blessed us financially so that we're in the place we owe no debt. We are going into no debt. And you say, well, if it's just $2 million, you can borrow that. No, we can't. And you say, why can't we? Because I have said we can't. And I've said it to you. We will not go into debt. We don't need to go into debt. As always, the good news is we have the money. The bad part of that is it's still in your pockets. But you can give. We can all give and be a part of this. And you say, well, why do we give? What's the purpose of giving? Well, the chapel is going to be a new place for our Hispanic congregation to meet. They're growing. They need new space. Our youth needs that space back that's upstairs. They need to be able to reclaim that space that's back up there. The chapel will serve numbers of things. It'll be set up and designed in a way where we can do marriages there. We can do funerals in there. We can do anniversaries in there. They'll have a reception room right off of the chapel that will be a great reception room for all kinds of things that we'll need in the future. What you don't realize is that a lot of the community comes and uses our facilities through the course of a week for various things. Even the school system comes here to use our facilities. So, why are we doing all of this? For this reason right here. For Harrison and for Hallie Kate. What are you saying? And for Della and Charles and for Jenny Ruth. Anybody ever call you Baby Ruth? Do they not? Oh. Now look, Charles, you're a lot better with your back bending over than mine. There you go. This is why. I have 16 babies. I have 16 babies next Sunday to dedicate in this church. 16. They've gone a little crazy, but no, we've got 16 babies. This is the future of your church. They will be here when a lot of us will be gone. I want these children, I want to be able to stand in that great cloud of witnesses, and I just can't wait for the day when I see Harrison get married. I can't wait to see these children grow up in this church. I can't wait to see what God does with this generation right here. And we are responsible for this generation. I want to help these parents. I want to grow them. I want these men to grow in their commitment to the Lord and to their families. I want these couples to be competent together in the Word of God as they raise these children. And I want them to be confident that they can go out of here and share with any one of their friends, you need to be in church. You need to know the Lord Jesus Christ, and you need to have your family in church. Come with me this Sunday, because I can assure you, not only is it a safe place for your children, but it is a good place for you and your family to be, where God will do things in your life that you've never thought of. God said to Jeremiah, turn to me, and I will show you great and mighty things that you've never thought about. Valleydale, put your eyes on Christ, and he will show us here how we can reach the next generation and the future. Let's stand.